Nancy,
Hi.
did you make her wear a mask?
No.
No,
No,
but
no,
I
no, no.
stopped to see things. No, he did not.
That would be kind of weird.
Yeah.
Republican making her wear a mask.
When did you say you were going to be in Paris?
Just in case.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. First, we have approval of the agenda. I don't believe we have any closed session per city attorney. Okay, are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Please join us in a moment of silence. And Councilmember Moore, would you lead us in the pledge? Yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone signed up to make public comment or send it in? No. Okay. Is there anyone who is not signed up but would still like to make public comment? Okay. Seeing no one and hearing no one, we'll move on. No information, no presentation, no recognitions. Consent agenda is next. Consent agenda consists of a resolution of support for receiving CARES Act municipal utility relief funds. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, no unfinished business, so moving on to new business. That would be Culvert Inspections. Welcome, Calvin.
Evening, Mayor Russo, Vice Mayor Banks, members of council, citizens, staff, and guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. It's time once again for our biennial culvert inspections. Unfortunately, we do have a culvert that's already in identified load restriction category, so that culvert on Manassas Drive, Russia Branch on Manassas Drive, has to be inspected on an annual basis. We actually are, as we started learning years ago, as Mosby Culvert deteriorated, we have more than, for many years, we only had the culvert inspected on under Manassas Drive, Russia Branch under Manassas Drive, but as it turns out, we actually have 5 sets of culverts in the city that qualify for VDOT bridge inspections. 2 of those sets go under Railroad Drive. The city manager had expedited a task order to have those inspected so that we could use those inspection reports for the RAISE grant application. Staff's been diligently working on that, and that certainly helps our application to have those reports in hand showing the deteriorated condition of those culverts. But that still leaves Mosby Culvert is exempt from this process because it was just reconstructed. So we're not due for an inspection report on Mosby, but we do have Russia Branch under Manassas Drive, and then Kirby Street, which is Mosby 2. That culvert also needs a biennial inspection. As I said, the city manager previously approved the task order number 7 to Bowman Consulting to have the 2 sets under Railroad Drive inspected. But the cost per set to have Manassas Drive and Kirby Street inspected is $10,743.75. That is task order number 8 to Bowman to have both of those inspections conducted. I would like to offer one correction in the numbers that are shown in the agenda item. It shows that we've only spent $93,232.22 out of the stormwater repair, replace, upgrade, and maintenance line. But I did not see an encumbrance for previous task order number 7. So when we're asking you tonight to ratify task order number 7 that the city manager approved, and to approve this second task order 8 for Kirby Street, Manassas, it actually drives the total in that line item, the tonight's request, up to $44,000.50. I just wanted to point that out. I did not see an encumbrance or a purchase order in the line item, so this $93,232.22 does not reflect task order 7 yet. So It's more appropriate to say that tonight we're asking for $44,000 out of that line item. Any further questions?
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? No? Okay. So in other words, the staff recommendation, well, there's two motions. The first one is that the governing body ratify the city manager's approval of task order number 7 with Bowman Consulting Group Limited to perform the inspections of the 2 Railroad Drive culverts at a cost not to exceed $22,513. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Second motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign task order number 8 with Bowman Consulting Group Limited to perform the inspections of the Manassas Drive and Kirby Street culverts at a cost not to exceed $21,487.50. $10,743.75 each, as presented and subject to final review by the city attorney.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you very much, Calvin. Okay, moving on to city manager.
So tonight, we're going to have 3 budget presentation, and I'll let Laszlo chime in. She's on the phone. Laszlo, you there?
Yeah, hi, good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. I have nothing to add, just ready to turn it over to our 3 departments to make any presentations. I am online, so if you have any questions that would leave for me, I am here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. So I'll be presenting the FY23 general operating budget for the Department of Parks and Recreation this evening. So the department's mission is to provide a variety of high-quality, diverse leisure opportunities, foster cities, parks, and natural resources, and support the individual growth and well-being of their citizens. So in conjunction with that mission, the department has 8 core values that we employ: environment, community, innovation, accessibility, excellence, people, partnerships, and diversity. So we currently sit at 17 full-time employees, filling 21 full-time positions. This mirrors our same position from last year. We have 80 regular part-time employees, so those are year-round employees. They work in some capacity throughout the fiscal year, and 88 seasonal employees. The seasonal employees number represents the peak of our seasonal employee staffing level, which generally is July of every fiscal year, and was the case this past fiscal year, July. That's pretty much comprised of lifeguards, outdoor water park staff, cashiers, summer camp counselors, park laborers. That pretty much is what makes up that 88 number. And then lastly, we have our library services division as part of the department org chart. Holly Ritchie is our full-time library director. She makes up the 1 full-time position there, and then she has 3 part-time support staff that support her efforts at the library. So our staff retention remains strong. Going into fiscal year 23, we have 11 years of average service between all of our current 17 full-time staff. Our longest tenured employee has 22 years with the city. 71% of our staff have at least 10 years or more with the city. And lastly, 94% have 7 or years, so basically all but 1 employee has been with us for at least 7 years. So, in terms of facilities, we have facilities, parks and rec facilities throughout the city. The 2 largest are the community center and the water park at 80 and 27,000 square feet respectively. We have 2 pavilions, one at Signal Hill Park, one at Costello, both rentable spaces. 6 playgrounds throughout the city, 2 in Costello Park, and then 1 each in Signal Hill Park, Baker Park, Scott Park, and Polk Park. Tennis courts at Signal Hill Park. We have 3 basketball courts throughout the city, 1 at Costello, 1 at Signal Hill, and 1 at Polk. We have a 20,000 square foot dog park that sits directly adjacent to the rear admin lot at the community center. And then below that is our MAP clinic, which provides acute care services to the community for those who are uninsured or underinsured. And then lastly, our transitional library, Manassas Park City Library, currently sits in Blooms Park. That will be transitioning into the larger City Hall space this upcoming summer and fall. A couple of items to note here in terms of facilities. We are recommending replacement via ARPA funds for the Signal Hill playground. That was originally in the CIP, but we have kind of redirected, I guess, our request there to be covered via ARPA funding. And again, that would be for the summer, fall of this year, so the start of fiscal year 23. In addition, we are also now recommending Polk Park Playground and basketball court replacement for the same time frame, also through ARPA funding. This was briefly mentioned the last time that I was here with Sue and Arelli when we were presenting on the preschool child stabilization grant. The thought process here is since we're able to utilize those grant funds to expedite the funding for that full-time assistant preschool teacher, that kind of allowed us to hopefully redirect those funds to this particular CIP project and address the needs of Polk Park for the basketball court and the playground there. And then lastly, the library will be transitioning from the current space in Blooms to a much larger 8,000 square foot space here in the new downtown. So in terms of parks and green space, our 2 largest parks are Blooms and Signal Hill at 270 and 108 acres respectively. We have several block or neighborhood parks, Baker, Polk, Scott. They're all small parks kind of integrated into the neighborhood or the existing community. We have 10 athletic fields throughout the city. 2 are cricket specific, several multi-purpose, several baseball, softball fields, all rentable spaces, all very highly utilized and spaces that are in high demand and we see more and more every day. In total, that's 417 acres of total parkland, 7+ miles of trails. Wanted to point out that the Signal Hill Park trail system was resurfaced this past December as part of a FY22 CIP project. That project really came out nicely. Received a lot of positive feedback from the community on that. And then we also were able to make some internal trail enhancements at the in Blooms. We started in the fall, and we were able to finish those up in February of this year. That was really kind of a neat opportunity. We basically expanded the trail by offering kind of more of a condensed novice option. That's part of the larger 3.5 mile section. It added just under a mile of additional trail. And we also were able to put in some shortcuts and some offshoots to kind of, make the trail a little bit more, just provide a little more options as opposed to just the standard loop that had been in place. And then we put new signage up as well, which have a map on the signage, as well as flyers with maps and QR codes as well that you can use for your phones to get that. Here's some pictures of the aforementioned items. The top left there is the new sign. Our marketing manager, Lauren, did a great job for this project. She designed that sign and came out really nicely. Down at the bottom left, that's part of the trail system that was resurfaced in Signal Hill Park. And in the bottom right, so that is an image from the plaque for the Naylor Cemetery dedication that we will be doing on Juneteenth. We wanted to kind of bring some awareness to that. That is something that we've been working along on for the last really over 6 months now, and are trying to kind of get everything wrapped up there. But that's going to be a really nice plaque that we'll have just inside the cemetery there in Casilla Park. Okay, so for FY23 proposed budget, I wanted to kind of lead in with this particular slide, these two tables, in particular the one at the top. You'll see here in a couple subsequent slides that there's a big jump in our part-time salary and wages line. I kind of wanted to just explain that a little bit and give some, credence as to why that is what it is. So there's been a number of kind of variables in play. Last year, the state's minimum wage was increased to $9.50. That went into effect in May. It was set to go into effect in January, but there was a delay due to the pandemic. So then it went up again this past January to 11. The way the schedule the state has is it will increase every January for the next couple of years. There is a year there where it stays at 12 and does not increase, and then it jumps to $13.50 and then to $15 eventually. So that increase coupled with really it seems to be a national employee shortage that the country's facing, which has really kind of driven up the market rate for part-time wages. We've just seen a number of, I guess what I would call competing agencies or organizations for which we kind of compete against for part-time staffing. Not just local government, not just the county, but places like Walmart, McDonald's, Wawa, Sheetz, Chipotle, places of that nature, and doing doing comparisons with what they were paying. A lot of those agencies are up to $15, $16, $17, $18 an hour. So as a result, it's been difficult to compete and try to remain, competitive and still be able to not only bring in good, qualified, responsible employees, but also keep, and retain those employees as well as current existing employees. So what I wanted to do was take the top table there. I was fortunate to be able to find all of those positions are from Prince William County, with the exception of the last two. And the reason I use the county is just because from a geographical standpoint, that's the municipal jurisdiction that we would lose employees to the most. We're not gonna. I know in terms of size, it's not necessarily apples to apples, but we often don't have issues with Falls Church or Fairfax City with part-time employees. I don't think the distance is worth the while. So we're more or less working with individuals who live closer to the county in terms of competing with them. So I wanted to try to use that as kind of the barometer. So the breakdown here shows the hiring range that we currently employ, as well as the competitor hiring range, which is Prince William County, with the exception of the last two. And then I took the salary midpoint for each as well, and then the last column just shows the discrepancy, and that's per hour discrepancy. So you can see there, it varies, pretty dramatically, anywhere from $1.62 at the lowest all the way up to $13, $14 an hour. So positions like if you take the, the recreation leader for extended care, that's the one that's at $13, $14 an hour difference. Their midpoint is at $25. So that's a position that we have year-round that we really rely on. That's for our before and after care. So with that being the case, coupled with the fact that the state's minimum wage schedule over the next 4 years, that is the reason for the dramatic increase in our part-time salary and wages line. But I just wanted to spell it out a little bit, or kind of quantify it a little bit, because I know that was a significant jump, from last year to this year. And then the bottom table, the reason after the fiscal years in parentheses, you see the variance between 11 and 12, 12 and 1350 to 15 is because the state's working off of the calendar year, they transcend our fiscal year. So for 6 months of the year, we would be required to pay one wage, and the other 6 months it would be the other. Okay, so this is just a simple graph showing the midpoint comparison. It's a little more kind of, impactful, I think, just seeing the discrepancy here. But as you can see, like even a position like a group exercise instructor, which again is a year-round part-time position, their midpoint is at $33 an hour, whereas we're at 22. So again, that's tough because those are oftentimes for group exercise, we are competing with a place like Prince William because as municipal agencies, we pay less in the private sector. It's very difficult for us to compete with like a Gold's Gym or a LA Fitness for group exercise instructors. Just for an example, so prior to working for the city, I worked for an HOA, a private HOA or a gated community. And we were paying $35 an hour at the time, and that was about 13, 14 years ago. So private sector is just going to be able to afford a much higher rate in that particular field. So we do kind of tend to compete with, you're going to compete with a Chin or even a Cup Run in Fairfax for instructors oftentimes versus with, Gold's Gym or but you can see too, like seasonal positions like the lifeguard 12 for us, 19 for the county, the head lifeguard 15 for us, 25 for the county. So again, that's another good example. Splashdown's very in close proximity. A head lifeguard there can be at 25. I think they call it there a lifeguard 2, but in terms of duties, it's the same position. 25 to 15. I mean, that's to drive maybe a little bit extra, maybe not. Maybe it's closer to $10 an hour difference. That's a no-brainer for a lot of people. So once we get into the actual line items here, each individual operational line, you can see there the top notable change from FY22 is the $248,000 increase in part-time salaries and wages. There's a $19,000 increase in contract services. So where that money is coming from is through a new maintenance contract with an outside pool vendor to support the maintenance of the splash pad in the new downtown. That'll be a daily maintenance procedure that they'll perform during kind of your traditional pool season, which is typically from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The fountain area will be kind of what I guess I call passive, in the times prior and after that. So it'll be on and running, but it won't be actively, engaged as far as with patrons. But in order to kind of ensure that the chemical balance is always appropriate and everything's operating, efficiently and effectively, we do have that contract in place now. In terms of the $15K for repairs and maintenance, that's solely attributed to maintenance, repairs, and attic stock for the new downtown. Things like trash receptacles, benches, planters, things of that nature, bike racks that we'll have to either repair, replace, light bulbs as part of their responsibility down there. The big one here, $451,000 for library services. So that's representing just the large discrepancy in going from a very small staffing model at the Transitional Library to a much larger 8,000 square foot facility in the downtown. So we'll be open for many more hours, we'll have more staff, and we'll have a lot more material that we'll have to fill the space. And then lastly is the $185,000 increase in the full-time salary and wages, and that's just in reference to the pay equity proposal that the city manager put in place last week. So page 2 of their operational expenditures, 3.5 or $3,500 increase in Casella pool ops. So that is preventive and corrective maintenance for heaters, for pumps, and for the UV system. As the system continues to get older, We're seeing more frequent repair needs. Things aren't lasting as long and tend to be a little more expensive right now to replace. $10,850 for July 4th. So that's a little misleading. The reason, that's really a $500 increase, but the reason that it's showing such a large increase is because we had a 50% credit last year because we had skipped the year prior due to the pandemic. So we only had to pay a little under $10,000 last year because it was the half the balance. So this is now going to be a full year's worth of contract. And we did see a $500 increase, so that's the reason there. And then lastly, we are looking at a $4,000 increase in seasonal events. Kind of the intent or the strategy here was to kind of backfill the end of the fiscal year in preparation for the beginning of FY24 for the downtown events. So we wanted to kind of have money in place to start that preparation process. There's the last couple of months, April, May, June of 23, going into 24.
Okay, before we move on, are you guys planning on moving any of the current events down to downtown that we have, like the Halloween, the Easter run, all that stuff?
Yeah, I think we're amenable to some of that. I think we're trying to evaluate what would work well in the downtown as far as current events that we may be doing now at the community center or somewhere else in the city, but also coming up with like kind of new, unique ideas. So yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a mix of both.
Okay.
Question?
Just to add, the events committee right now is reviewing ideas. That's an internal committee across departments, and so their goal is to kind of brief me here on different ideas as we get closer to having the downtown. And we're looking at two different phases. One kind of pre-movie theater, pre-completion of the full downtown, more community-oriented events, and then after we have the full downtown, the larger events. So don't expect to kind of see bigger things immediately. They'll be a little bit more community-oriented for the smaller footprint that we're going to have with the first phase of the downtown.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hampton?
Yeah. So over here you have programs other. Can you give me an example of what falls underneath there?
Yes, so the program's other, that's kind of a catch-all, that focuses on our senior programs. That addresses our Buddy Club, which is our membership program for adults with cognitive disabilities. That also is some carryover sometimes if one of either the preschool or the extended care line is running a little bit high and we need some help. We'll pull from programs other at times. That's kind of like a little bit of a backup for those two, depending on the fiscal year, although they generally are very good about keeping those lines at budget. But yeah, so we're looking at adult programs falls into that. So if we have supplies for adult cooking classes, adult martial arts classes, basically we're looking predominantly at seniors, Buddy Club, and then adult type programming cost.
Okay. Thank you.
So here's a breakdown of our projected revenues for FY23. As you can see here, sorry, the green's a little intense there, but it didn't look quite as green on my screen. Basically, all but two of our lines we're expecting year-over-year increases from this year to 23. The two that we are expecting, we're much more, kind of not quite as confident as our membership line and our group exercise line. And both of these, we kind of anticipated this with the pandemic. This is going to be a little bit of a long haul getting back to where we wanted to be here. With closing down the facility and then redirecting efforts for other, more important priorities as far as citywide initiatives to help the community with the pandemic. We didn't reestablish our membership model until this past July. So as a result, a lot of people who were members for the purposes at least of the wellness center, I think found other homes in the meantime. And oftentimes not everyone immediately comes back right away. It takes some time to earn that business back. So, we have a number of marketing strategies in place where we're constantly trying to, rebuild and kind of reestablish that line. But it is going to take us a little bit of time. We're already seeing good returns. We had a really strong month in March, and so far April's been good. So, but that's why. And then the group exercise, same thing. You know, a lot of your group exercise participants, when the gym shut down, they found new homes. They went somewhere else, and we're just trying to reestablish those relationships, rebuild, bring a new business there. But on the positive end, you know, we're looking at a lot of increases across all other lines. In particular, you know, the community center rentals just continues to be incredibly strong and grow. Even to the point, it's funny, I was joking with Amelia, my binder broke. I can't fit any more contracts in it. The binder broke, and I got to buy a new binder now, which is a really good problem to have. It's never happened since I've been there. So, but we really are seeing a lot of interest, not only indoor, but also with our outdoor rentals. So we're really really trying to ride that wave, continue to embrace that, and you know, we had a really strong response at the water park last summer. We're very pleased with that. We expect that to be just as strong, if not stronger, this year. We're looking at the park revenue line, so that basically is your field rentals, your pavilion rentals. Again, the start has been incredible for this spring, so we feel very confident that's going to continue as we go into FY23. The sports line, that's one that I definitely look to see a big jump. So last year, we were able to reestablish our Manassas Park Youth Basketball League, so our internal developmental league. However, because of the pandemic, and you know, we had a surge there. I think it was the Omicron, you know, right in the middle of the season. The numbers, while we were very happy with them, we had a little over 200 participants. You know, on a normal year, we're anywhere between 350 and 500. So we've got room to grow there, and I think we will as things, you know, continue to progress and improve. And then we also were unable to participate in the travel league this year with the county, just because of restrictions they had in place in regards to the pandemic. So once we're able to reestablish that relationship, that will be another good revenue stream. And we're also looking to do a summer youth league this year, which we haven't done in many years, but there's been a lot of demand and a lot of interest, so we're looking to explore that. And that wasn't even factored in when we were actually doing our budget input, so that could even be a little bit more icing on the cake if that comes through. So feel really good about these lines and the direction we're going. Definitely things are going in the right direction right now. Oh, and our preschool, wanted to mention our preschool, we're looking at least 20 for preschool for next year. We're at 14 right now, but we've had a number of individuals come to us with interest for next year already. And also our extended care program's at 35 right now, and we're looking to be at least at around 45 next year. So that'll be helpful in that particular line. Okay, so just a couple FY21 highlights. A little bit shorter than a normal year just because of our operation was a little bit different than it has been. But we still, I feel confident, or I feel optimistic at the results we did see. The trunk or treat event, we had 1,000 participants. This was a unique event this time around. What we did is we had basically pre-registered. We had basically families pre-register so that we could kind of ensure social distancing and everything was done responsibly and safely. So we had 4 groups of 250, sold it out, everyone signed up, and it was a great event. Virtual tree lighting, we had 573 patrons that did that. We were able to maintain our Santa Sleigh initiative, served 20 children via 8 families. So that was exciting. That was something that I was really proud that we were able to keep in place. Our Santa Special Delivery, 85 children registered. So that was a special, unique event we had never done before. Caitlin did a great job with that. Basically created these boxes, these goodie boxes, you know, games, recipes, you know, different crafts, and did videos throughout the week, you know, as far as like maybe baking one of the recipes so that the kids could follow along. And then the parents were able to come and pick up the goodie box or the bag, and Santa delivered it to their car in person. So that was a pretty neat event. Then we were able to kind of be strategic, whereas we had a lot of limitations with some of our internal programming. We're able to host the Northern Virginia Homeschool Basketball League and Volleyball League and kind of maximize some rental space opportunities there. In total, it came in at, I think it was like quite read that from here, but I believe when I put that in there, it's around 55,000 in rental revenue. And again, that was just space that we were able to repurpose that we normally would have been utilizing for our internal developmental league that we're able to, in turn, in this case, offer up to these homeschool leagues. We had a number of AAU teams come in for practice and games throughout the winter and spring. Our Kite Festival had a great turnout. We were just under 200 there. The water park had a great, this is for this year. So that's basically, it says March through June, but you figure that's 1 month of operation, 80,000, so that was a really strong month. Our yard sales both sold out. We had a number of swim meets still. Feels forever ago, but the library opened for business on the 4th of August in 2020. And our Easter egg hunt had 110 participants. To kind of compare that, this past weekend we had an Easter egg hunt, and we had, we had 162. So
Wow.
quite a big jump, but we were happy with the turnout there. So one of the reasons why our metrics weren't quite or aren't quite as what we'd like for them to be on a typical year, like I mentioned before, the department took a lot of pride in trying to support the city with a number of COVID initiatives throughout the year to help support the community. 3 in particular are listed here. We've got food delivery. That's what we started. That was part of technically FY20, but it did end in 21, so I went ahead and included it here. City Hall support, and then most recently the vaccination clinic. And you can see here a number of metrics, but if you look at staff hours, for the food delivery, we had over 3,700 staff hours collectively, 266 packages delivered, 68 residents served. When you go to the vaccination clinic, 800 appointments were made by our DPR staff. Just under 2,800 staff hours from our DPR staff. We took over 4,600 call center calls, either received or made. And most importantly, the last number there, obviously through the great work of the MAP clinic and George Mason University, 35,000 plus patrons or members of the community were vaccinated. So pretty impressive. Here's a couple pictures, all clinic related. The top left there, that's a great shot. So that's Dr. Ansher from the Health District, and then Dr. Sutter from George Mason. They've just been, couldn't ask for better partners, and just wonderful to work with. So just kind of finishing up here. So some of our key metrics for FY21. I won't go through all these, but basically we had 6 year-over-year increases and then 6 year-over-year decreases. So considering kind of our operational status was fairly limited, consider this to be pretty good turnout. In particular, our website visitors and email open rate was very strong. And then the rentals sold, their number is a decrease. That was close. As hard as I believe, that was close, because we had a lot of, during that winter, there were a lot of capacity restrictions. I think it was like 10 people or 20 people in a space. So it kind of minimized their ability to rent for a couple months, but we were able to still kind of finish strong once those were lifted. And our indoor pool rental hours went up. That was a really strong number. We were able to attract a number of swim teams that were unable to get into other facilities, so we were able to maximize kind of leverage that. And then our pavilion rentals and our field rentals were very strong. They were strong for a traditional year, so those were very well received when we saw those come in. And lastly, I try to show this one every year. Department cost recovery, so over the last 6 years, fairly consistent. 21 certainly is a big drop, and just wanted to kind of, in small print there, so the NRPA does a average as far as for the nation, that came in at 22.9. Where that's a little bit difficult, it's not necessarily apples to apples. The NRPA runs theirs for the calendar year. So it's calendar year 21. So again, it kind of cuts us off. So that's, but for all, ultimately 21%, that's our lowest since I've been here. But that's something that I think we'll see certainly an improvement for FY23.
And it's still competitive with that average? Yeah, it's
Yes.
very competitive. Thank you, Jay. We also compare very favorably with other localities when it comes to the amount of parkland.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah, 21%, which is significantly higher
Yes.
than any of our neighboring jurisdictions.
Yes, yes. Any comments or questions of Jay? Yes.
Jay, the revenue for the library, the 141, is that from the state or is that the city contribution?
Correct, yes. So the 141, that's directly from the Library of Virginia that we
Okay.
receive on a quarterly basis. And then we use that to then in turn pay for the materials, the material budget basically, that we're billed from LS&S for. That was originally projected to be 70,000, but the state, I believe it's October, is when they made the specific determination, and it came in and doubled. And Holly feels pretty confident that it will be around 140 for the foreseeable future.
And that's the annual revenue from them. All right, nice. And then, the program, are we still offering the computer labs? Or I remember that closed down, or is that still an option?
We still have the computer lab. Yes, it's still available and open. I'll be honest, sometimes we have some issues with the computers not always working. Sometimes there's some,
So that service is still there for the teens to come in and
Yes, sir.
after school?
Yep.
Okay. And then, last question, sorry. The overtime that you guys were projecting, is that due to maybe the COVID assistance, or what is that?
So the overtime basically doubled, and the reason for that was solely for the downtown, to help with snow removal or any additional support that may be needed down there for full-time staff, just because we do have a pretty lean part-time staff, in particular in the fall and winter months, because they're seasonal positions. So we lean more on our full-time staff at that time.
The downtown?
Yeah, I have a few questions for you. I'm looking over the organizational chart. Can you give me an idea of what a therapeutic program staff member does?
Yes, they work with our buddy club, so that's their membership for adults with developmental or cognitive disabilities.
Okay. And then I took a look at the marketing communications line, and that caught my eye because most of my career has been in marketing communications. I thought it was kind of interesting that there's a writer, content specialist, and a marketing assistant. Is that actual now, or is that forecasted?
That's forecasted. That's our hope. That's what we had in the past, but currently we only have the writer content specialist on the books.
Okay, so you have the marketing, you have the Marcoms manager, and you've got the writer content specialist.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then my other question is, when is the downtime in the parks, not the parks, but at the rec center?
As far as what space?
Just,
In general?
yeah.
Middle of the day. So the first part of the day is heavy with senior population comes in. The senior population generally tends to be out at least probably 11:30. So kind of from that time frame till probably about 3 before the teens arrive, that's when it's probably at its slowest.
Okay. And then are there programs, what programs or what are you guys doing to kind of fill that gap time? We have staff there, we've got some free time, things to just kind of generate some revenue during that time or interest during that time.
Sure. We generally haven't done a lot of programming for that time just because of the fact that the demographics, there aren't a lot of demographics to support because of the kind of, historically, the seniors come early and then the teens come in the early afternoon and then kind of after work and families and parents come 4 or 5 o'clock. But we certainly can look at coming up with some ideas to provide some program options for the middle of the day.
I mean, one of the things that just kind of popped in my head is homeschools. I mean, there are a number of people that are homeschooled, and I know that they tend to have a different schedule. They don't have the constraints that a brick and mortar school tends to have.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We used to have, we worked with some homeschools. We did a homeschool PE program for a number of years. Mike Arrington ran that. It was an excellent program. And we also had some homeschool, I believe we worked with you on that for the afternoon and evenings, like a tutoring program. Yeah, so we have had some. We have reached out to that community. I know Holly's reached out through the library as well. So that is definitely something we can try to look into a little more closely and see if we can.
Because I think anytime, if we can bring some bodies in
Sure.
during those downtimes, then that just serves everybody better.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Moore?
Great presentation, Jay. Appreciate it. 3 questions. LGBTQ teen program, is that going to continue in FY23?
It is. We actually just, 2 of our staff members that were kind of leading that program recently, they left. They moved away. So we actually recently just had one of our existing teen center staff members take some training that would be advantageous to kind of be a leader for that type of program.
Great.
So we are trying to bridge that gap and find some more leadership to help ensure that that program continues. But it is still technically open and available. We just haven't had a ton of interest.
Sure.
But that is something that we want to continue to, explore.
Market.
And market, yes, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jay. The other question, can you go over again Signal Hill bathroom repairs, when they will take place? There were some definitely needed repairs that needed to take place at the Signal Hill
In the pavilion?
bathrooms. Yes.
Yes, so we actually just had, we had a plumber come out recently and do some pipe work. There was, trying to remember when that was within the last couple of weeks that we had some significant repairs over there. Are you talking as far as more structural functional or more like aesthetic?
Structural functional,
Okay.
ADA issues, the width of the bathrooms, things of that nature.
Okay.
The stalls.
I don't know how much we can do as far as the ADA piece without doing a complete demo and overhaul, to be honest. We certainly can try to do whatever we can within our control. But as far as the ADA part, I know when we were looking at the RTP project grant, we tried to add in a demo and rebuild of the pavilion there because we knew that there's a need there. And it's also in the CIP as well right now. We added that to the CIP as a separate project. Unfortunately, with the grant, it exceeded the total amount, so we weren't able to keep it in there. But the cost, if I'm not mistaken, it is in the CIP for one of the out years.
FY28. For the pavilion, it's FY28. And I believe it was 170,000, and for the Signal Hill Water Park bathrooms and facilities, it's FY25, and that's $1.2 million.
How much was it?
So lastly, in 28, that's the structural changes to the Signal Hill?
It's a pavilion renovation, but I'm not sure if that, I would assume that would include it, but let me open my records. Jay, do you remember exactly the components of that one?
When we got the quote, we wanted to make sure everything was completely ADA compliant, and that as far as even to the fact of like making repairs would be easier to access.
Absolutely.
So yes, it included everything ADA accessible. ADA compliance was one of the main priorities when we got that quote.
Are there grants that can be applied for that could be put towards that?
So,
Yeah, we can certainly look into that and see if what may be out there for sure.
and do we have any, just since we're on the subject, any lifts for ADA folks to get into the lazy river?
We do. We have.
Okay.
We have
Very good.
the indoor pool as well as the water park.
You're talking about the water park, yeah.
I don't 100% quote me on the water park. I'm 99% sure, but I'll double check on that. But I know for a fact we do at the indoor pool.
Yeah, at the community center. And then my final question is trash receptacles. You mentioned that's part of your budget. You're going to increase in our downtown plaza. Will those trash receptacles have places for people to not only put their trash, but also put bottles and cans for recyclables? In other words, kind of a dual function can?
So what I did when I got the blueprints, I basically ran to come up with this budget number. I just ran the exact serial and model number of what the builder was putting in to the space. I'll be honest, I did that back in probably November. But from what I recall, I think they were kind of just standard. They almost looked like wrought iron type style traditional trash receptacles. I don't recall them having separate compartments for recycling from my recollection.
I would love to know if we could at least get the estimates on what it would cost to get that separated can. I know lots of communities have them.
Sure.
It kind of encourages our community to recycle and put their bottles and cans in their appropriate places.
Yep, absolutely. And we certainly could procure those when we did out of stock or replacement. But I would imagine you probably want to, in terms of matching, maybe we can get it on the front end, everything to match up.
That's what I'm
front.
thinking, the front end.
Yeah, we could then
Yeah.
just buy something to replicate that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
And Jay,
Yes, sir.
if I can add too, I think Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, when we applied for the RTP grant with the federal government for the trails, didn't we try to add the pavilion restroom renovations to that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, and so we have tried to apply for grants and we weren't successful the first attempt, but it doesn't mean we won't keep trying in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Mensing.
Yeah, just one question. Did you say that the splash pad will be running all year long?
No, so I may have said that, but I didn't mean to.
Okay.
So sorry. Basically, kind of the prime time season would be Memorial Day through Labor Day. I think the intent is to start in April, sometime in April, and then go to right up until Memorial Day, and that's kind of be like a passive period where the fountain's on, but it's not like actively
okay.
engaged for children. And then the same at the end of the season, so from Labor Day up until around probably Halloween. It would
Okay.
again be on and running, but not actively, like wide open, where kids are running around and jumping. It's more or less for aesthetics.
Okay, and then the rest of the year is off. The
And
winter.
the rest of the year is off, yes.
Okay.
Yep,
Thanks.
sure.
Did Laszlo have a comment?
No, I was just going to say we're calling it the interactive phase and non-interactive phase. So in the summertime, to Jay's point, between Memorial Day and Labor Day, that's when it's interactive. For kids to play in the water, we'll have a different rhythm as it splashes up more for play. Whereas the non-interactive periods in the late spring and early fall, it's going to be lower shooting water, just kind of more to hear the sound of water, almost more like a regular fountain in your downtown versus an actual interactive splash pad. And then we'll shut it down during the colder periods.
I just have one comment. Jay, I just want to commend you and on just a good job being in charge of Parks and Rec, and just stepping up and I mean, only one employee, out of your full-time employees, having been 7 years, less than 7 years. Yeah, that was impressive. Just kudos. I heard for the Governor Youngkin's rally in October. That wasn't even my idea, to have it at the community center. That was brought up by people outside of Manassas Park. So that means our name is getting out there. And it was important. 300 people attended, 325 about. And they said, let's do it at Manassas Park Community Center. We have to run and quickly get it. So just the name's getting out there for our community center as a place to host events. So kudos to you, and just to let you know that you're being on the map. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Jay, thank you very much. And next we have public safety budget presentation. Welcome, Chief.
Years ago, but I worked there.
That's a good idea about the homeschool.
I want to do a quick overview of the proposed budget. Cover the overview of the FY23 proposed budget, revenue and expenditures, per capita spending by the police department, grants we received and we're applying for FY23, police department organizational chart, which is updated in FY23, staffing and positions, our strategic plan on staffing plan for the next 5 years, departmental needs, and to do a quick overview of some crime statistics and calls for service. This slide right here kind of shows the comparison to FY22 to 23.
we did see an increase by about 820,000 in FY '23, but that's due largely because of the pay adjustments on positions that we got through ARPA and also the COPS grant expenditures that we received in grant funding. One significant increase we saw in FY '22 was a grant that we received where we had to do a $50,000 match for our body-worn cameras for the police department. So that was one increase in the expenditure side. We do anticipate an increase in our general fund, FY '23 general fund revenue due to our parking fines, speed, red light cameras, and bus camera violations. And also our e-ticket citation program. Expenditures for FY '23 compared to FY '22. Kind of breaks it down a little bit more. There is approximately about 17% increase this year, but a lot of it is due to the positions and the pay adjustments. Overtime, we did, I just want to highlight a couple ones that I thought were significant to bring up would be the overtime, travel education, professional services. Right now, we don't provide physicals like the fire department does for their staff, so we were able to work with the fire department to get under contract, and that's why that's a $31,000 increase. Our professional service, we saw some areas where we needed to get some new technology for our investigative services division, and our operating costs and supplies actually should have been about $141K, so this one's off about $60,000. And our ARPA expenditure for FY '23 is projected at $438. And then the pay adjustments, and if the 2 communication specialists are approved for FY '23, we're looking at approximately $153,000. Per capita spending, we've increased in this, which I'm glad to see. We went from 254 last year to 325. I think that's due to that we were able to get the 2 COPS grant positions and the special victims detective. So we actually finally got above, I think Baton and Culpeper, we've always been below them at 254 roughly. So we're up at 325, which is about 23% off from the area average. Some grants that we received, I'm happy to say we got over $800,000 in grants awarded to us in FY '22. Big one was that congressional direct spending, that we got a lot of support from the governing body on public safety and city buildings for security. So we're hoping to get that email so we can apply for the funds here in the next month or so. Let's see, the COPS grant we got, 2 positions, $250,000 over 3 years. And then some other smaller grants we received in FY '23 to PCJS. For FY '23, we're going to go ahead and put in for the same grants. One that's new would be the SRO COPS grant, which we have support from the schools for this. So that'll be $125,000 over 3 years. So we're working with Mr. Jackson and Richard McIntyre on this grant. So hopefully we'll hear something soon. Police organizational chart, we updated it. One change from last year would be the community resource officer. We've had it vacant for some years now due to staffing issues and not being able to COVID to do some community events. So we went ahead and put one of our sergeants in charge of that, which has worked well so far. Getting National Night Out, 4th of July, being part of the planning committee that we just established within our city. So we're hoping that we can get more events now and more public interaction with our residents. Staffing, we still experiencing some challenge in retaining senior officers. In the last 2 years, we've lost about 41% of our staff, 12 being officers, 7 being communication specialists. The primary factor for this turnover rate was due to our funding challenges for competitive rate salaries, which we're working on with the pay adjustment this year. Incentives. One of the things when I ask other chiefs in the area is they offer incentives, stipends for school, military, longevity, special certifications. That's something we have not been able to do. And they also offer, incentives for their detectives. So that's something I'll kind of work out to see how we can do that in our city.
Okay.
To improve us to the salary compensation and area average, we would need right now approximately $310,000. But we would also need to institute a step program that every year these officers will know where they're going to be at, like a 3% increase step and a COLA every year. But with the pay adjustments that we're proposing for FY '23 through ARPA and through our regular funding, it should bring us approximately 75%. It should close that gap by 75%. Resident to Rachel, we improved in this one. Last year we were at 1.7% with 31 officers. Right now we're at 34 budgeted officers. So once we get staffing levels up to full capacity, we should be at 1.9, which gets us closer to the area average of 2.5, or the national average of 2.5. 5-year staffing plan for the police department. We have proposed in the FY '23 budget the 2 communication specialists, dispatchers. If we get those approved, that would be great. So, it'd be one of our goals to put 2 dispatchers in there 24/7. Right now, they're one dispatcher in there for 12 hours at a time. It can be overwhelming with phone calls, radio traffic, and 911 calls. Projected for '24, we're hoping that we can increase by 1 officer. Hopefully the grant for the SRO will come through. That'll allow us to have 2 SROs within the city. Unfreeze the animal control officer position. Add a records clerk. The FOIA request is records checks has been overwhelming at the PD for one person to do, and if she's gone, we got to tell our people that come in the lobby that hey, we got to come on a different day. Crime analysts and a social media manager is something that I think we need. We struggle in that area, keeping our community informed. Most agencies have full-time social media managers that provide updates, answer questions 24/7. Where we don't have that capability right now. Also, a property and evidence and training coordinator. Right now, my command staff and certain supervisors take on these additional roles, which takes them off their primary duties to do additional things within the agency, which makes it hard at times to be able to concentrate on one aspect of your job. And then the increase in parking violation we're still seeing in the future, and then with the downtown development, I'm hoping that we can justify getting an additional parking enforcement officer. Bill's doing a great job, but I think it'd be great if we had to cover the whole city properly. And I'd like to see maybe a part-time position in FY '24 to help out with some admin duties within the department. Next time I would project that we would need additional staffing would be in 26 and 27, and that would be, if the need for it would be to add additional officers or a detective to help out. So these are unfunded needs, which we talked about: the animal control officer, health crisis co-response unit. We submitted this through our ARPA funding, so that is pending that, hopefully for approval. And then the 2 communication specialists that's proposed for FY '23, the crime analyst position and social media manager, and then the full-time training coordinator and property and evidence officer, and the stipend. This number does not reflect the fire department, but we figured out what they would need also, because they were running into the same situation we are, retaining officers without providing stipends. So that would actually increase by another $75,000 if we was to go with that. And then obviously the area average salary adjustment about $310,000. That's on the departmental performance measures. Compares the third quarter in FY '21 to the third quarter in FY '22. We did see a decrease in cost for service, foot patrol, traffic arrests, increase in parking though, and criminal arrests are down, which it shows a lot what our officers are doing out there every day, making their presence known within our city. And then animal control calls keep going up every year. It went up again this quarter. And that's something that our officers do additional to their regular duties. This is just a graph that shows comparison from the FY '21 third quarter. Take any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Financial questions? Yes, ma'am.
Chief, I got a couple of questions for you. How many SROs do we have now?
Just one.
And it covers all the schools?
Well, the primary at the high school and secondary campus, so, if something happens at the elementary school, then we go over there.
And then What's the anticipated impact of the downtown upon the police department besides parking?
I don't see a big impact. I'm hoping that's a good place for people to enjoy and not break the law. The way the layout, I don't think we're gonna have a big issue there. I think normal, if there's a special event, obviously we're gonna have to increase our staffing for that day only, but I don't see a problem with, like, calls for service that is gonna be overwhelming. I don't see that.
Okay. And then my third question, what trends are out there and within law enforcement that is going to impact or that you have to prepare for in the police department?
Like crimes trends or?
Trends in general. It's not an area that I'm familiar with, so.
I mean, we're seeing still overdose, with fentanyl. We're seeing a lot of sex crimes within our city, robberies, larcenies. So, those crimes are still up. Really haven't seen much trends like we were seeing a few years ago, some of the stuff prior to COVID. So I think those are the major ones that we are keeping an eye on, and that's why we're making a bigger police presence in our neighborhoods, communities, walking on foot, and being in the shopping centers. And I think some of the technology that we put up has helped us out a lot to see that we do have an issue in certain areas.
And as a side note, a friend of a friend of a friend told me a story where this person got 11 tickets down by the high school, and because they were speeding, they didn't realize that there was a speed camera there, and that person is now slowed down.
11 tickets later.
That's a lot of money.
I try to explain to them, regardless whether these lights are flashing or not, it's 25 miles an hour.
Right.
Regardless whether that camera's there, it's still 25. That means there's a problem there if you're going that fast.
Right. Well, the friend that told me the story. It was like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right?
Did they learn?
They did,
Okay.
and my friend's attitude was, well, don't speed. That's what, and that's the
It's
message
simple.
that he sent back through the channel was, don't speed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's $2,000 worth of tickets. Good God.
Have a first follow-up?
No, that's it. But thank you, Chief.
Okay. Question? Yes.
The animal control officer, you want to put somebody in place by FY24, correct?
Yes.
What's the possibility of splitting, I guess, moving that up earlier to FY23 and then splitting the 911, maybe one there, one there? You know what I'm saying?
To be honest, sir, I think the communication area
It's more important?
That's priority. Over officers, to be honest. That's too much work for one person to do in there, 12 hours a day. When something major happens, they're taking traffic not only from officers, anybody responding, 911, especially if multiple people call 911. The phone's ringing, the regular phone, people calling for whatever services they need. This is too much for one person to handle.
Oh, no, I'm saying instead of getting two communications, do one.
But the only way I can do two in there 24/7 is to get two.
Oh, two, you need two, I see. And then,
Come on, man.
I think that's all I had for, because I mean, the animal control numbers, they've been increasing year over year.
Right now, one of my lieutenants is taking
They're taking over
on
that?
nights, which just doesn't help, but he's the one that's certified. So most of the calls we get are during the day.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, my question's about the red light camera on 28. Under what circumstances would you get a ticket for turning right on red?
Well, the way the code section is written, you have to stop at the stop bar.
Okay.
Once you pass that stop bar and you don't slow down, you're at violation.
Okay. Cool.
We've
Thank
had 1,200 violations so far.
Okay.
So it shows we have a problem.
We bit.
Thank you.
Comments or questions?
My question is, in regards to our new speed cameras, are we getting complaints, and what are the complaints?
That they don't feel like they should get a ticket.
Oh, okay, got it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you
They
said.
don't feel like they should get a ticket for speeding.
They also think that they're getting ticketed for going 35 or 36. But I know that it's calibrated so it tickets you after 10 miles per hour, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay,
So that's the complaint again.
got it. Okay,
Not only are they
thanks.
speeding, but they're significantly speeding.
But either way, at 35 is speeding.
It's
The
still
speed
speeding.
limit is
Yeah.
25 in the school
Exactly.
zone. And regardless of the school zone or not, it's 25. I
Okay.
had one guy tell me I had to change the speed limit on all of Euclid. I said, well, Euclid goes in the city and the county, so I don't know how we're gonna do that. And it's 25 throughout the three cities, or two cities in the county.
But you only get ticketed if you go out above 10, like 10 and above.
Right.
Yeah.
All right,
10 or
thanks.
above, yeah.
You have a follow-up, Russ?
No, that's all, thanks.
Comments, questions? Thank you very much.
I think-
Next, we have Fire Department budget presentation. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and everybody. James Hooper here to do the Fire Department presentation for the budget. So we go over the overview. We have the department principles first, department overview, strategic plan overview, fire and rescue operations overview, the operational staff comparisons, 5-year response data, FY23 budget highlights, the 5-year CIP overview, and some future needs. Sounds like a lot. So just some fire rescue principles for us. First of all, is a vision statement. The first one is to keep the fire and rescue personnel informed of the latest trends in the fire service while maintaining the utmost safest and best practices. We will take a proactive approach towards advancing the department forward for the greater good of our community. That's pretty much where we're at. Our mission statement is to save lives and preserve property. And I'm not going to read everything to you, but that's the majority of that. Our core values: honor, integrity, professionalism, and compassion. With the professionalism, you can see right there, we want to hold ourselves accountable for everything we do. I think that's key, is you hold yourself accountable for your actions. When it comes to compassion, as you can see, we're going to provide the excellent care for people no matter of their social status or their situation. And that's how the staff feels. So the organization chart, you can see the organization, there's a couple areas that are highlighted. That's the areas where we hope to grow the department in the future years. One is at the fire marshal's office with a part-time, currently it's a part-time inspector. We'd like to have a full-time deputy fire marshal that would help out a lot there. Would also give us some succession planning there for when Chief Gilmer leaves us. I don't want to be the fire marshal again for 6 to 8 months. I did that once, it was good enough. And then also at the bottom, you see where there's total personnel. So we have a battalion chief, a captain each shift, and then there's 6 additional personnel. So it's a shift of 8 every day. So anytime we see leave or anything like that, we're already into the overtime budget because the staffing needs are just so low. So our strategic plan process, some of what we're doing now. Since I took over, my goal was to redo the strategic plan to meet our current goals and the city's current goals. So our process for that's going to be looking at our people. So recruiting for high integrity people with some loyal employees. Also retention efforts. We're going to try to figure out ways to retain our good employees. We have a lot of good employees. I don't want to lose any of them. They're all mostly tenured employees. I think the majority of our staff's 10 years or better.
Good.
They've been here for a while. Our career development plan, which we have put out, is in its last revision. Just waiting on someone to sign off on it. Someone's holding up the boat again. I'll get it out there. Succession planning, that goes along with the career development. And then we're definitely looking at the health, safety, and mental well-being of our staff. And Sally coming on board has been a huge help for that.
Good.
So also looking at our facilities, our vehicles, our equipment. With vehicles and equipment, prices are soaring. We got to truly forecast that out. The services that we provide, the EMS services, the fire suppression services, special services. We currently have the ladder truck. There's no staffing for it. We're looking to add staffing. We get that specialty service on the road. We do a lot of community outreach services to the fire marshal's office. Hopefully one day we'll have enough staff to be able to do the community paramedics, and we're going to put a paramedic into the community to help some of our senior citizens with some issues prior to needing 911. We can hit that off before they need to call us. And then the fire inspections and the fire investigations we do. Staying operational ready, there's some photos of the stuff that we do on a daily basis. So in the operations division, there is the emergency medical services. There's the ambulance in Manassas Park. They will 99.9% of the time be a paramedic unit. Advanced life support. It's required to have 2 people in at all times. Currently, we're running a firefighter EMT, which is a basic, and then a paramedic with the firefighter as well. So on the incident command system, we have a battalion chief that's staffed 1 person per day. Ideally, in most of NOVA, it's 2 people. There's a command officer, and then there's the aide. Aide basically drives for the command officer, so as the driving to the call, the command officer can truly formulate a plan, going, track everything, write everything down, so when he gets there, he knows accountability where everybody is, so that we don't lose the war. And then we have the fire suppression. And during the time here in Manassas Park, we run a paramedic fire engine, which is a great service. We only have 1 ambulance here, so it's great support. That's staffed with a minimum of 3 every day, with a captain, a pump operator, and then a firefighter EMT or firefighter paramedic. The National Fire Protection Association says that minimum staffing should be 4. We can't afford that right now. We're working for that in the future, and that's the goal for that. We want to put a ladder truck in service as soon as possible. That's going to require a minimum of 3, so we'll have to promote a lieutenant. We have a lot of training going on right now for this right now with driver operators and the aerial pump operators and all that. Then we're also going to try to put a firefighter or a firefighter paramedic over there as well. Again, NFPA 1710 says you should have 4 people there for the safety of the situation you're going to and your crew. It should be optimal safety. So just some staffing comparisons throughout the region. For the fire department, we can compare ourselves to Falls Church, because Falls Church contracts with Arlington County. But we can compare ourselves to the city of Fredericksburg as well as Manassas City and Fairfax City. As you can see, those 3 jurisdictions run with at least 60 operational employees. We run with 24. Basically, at the bottom, you see what the comparison looks like with the engines. Manassas running 2 engines per day. Fairfax City runs 2 engines per day. Fredericksburg runs 2 engines per day. And Manassas Park does 1. And the key to that would mostly be staffing, because Manassas and Manassas Park both are running with minimal staffing of 3 per day. The other 2 were running with 4. The ladder trucks, there's 1 in Manassas City. We're staffing it with 3, sometimes 4. The goal is always 4 for that. Fairfax City's 4, so they really fall into what Fairfax County wants to do. And then Fredericksburg is the same way, with 1 with 4. The command units, 1, 1, and 1. Everybody's doing 1 person with Manassas and Manassas Park. The other 2 jurisdictions are doing 1 command unit with 2 people. And then, of course, the ambulances. Manassas, Fairfax City, and Fredericksburg are running 2 units apiece and running 1. So that's just a comparison between the jurisdictions. The key for the ladder truck for us, when you look back at what the insurance officer says the suppression rating schedule specifically states response areas with 5 buildings that are 3 stories or 35 feet or more in height, or have 5 buildings that have a needed fire flow of 3,500 gallons per minute, or any combination should have a ladder truck. We meet all that criteria in our city, and we have since 2010, 12, 13. We definitely can justify the need for that. So just some fire and EMS totals for the last 5 years. Call volume has steadily more increased. We look at 2022 year to date. We average that out. We're looking at going over 3,000 calls again this year. They're just 911 calls. And that's not taking into consideration the training hours the staff does and the activity hours they do per day. So if you take in the activity hours and training hours with the call volume, they're extremely busy. I think Ms. Hampton's been there to hang out with them.
But I wasn't busy that night. Evidently, it was a good luck charm.
But we'll stay hanging out with
Pardon?
They just want to stay and hang out with you all night.
That's to be. I did get to dress up in your stuff, though.
You guys can come back, so.
I will. Let me get through school, let me get through this class, and I'll come back.
So in our fire marshal's office, there's 4 basic areas that Chief Gillen handles. Community risk reduction and fire investigation, the environmental crimes, and the admin. And really, the admin has been a big focus that I've added to his plate. He's been a really big help with the budget to me. He does a really good job tracking the budget and all that. Pulling him off the street a lot, it's really kind of, opened up the doors for that part-time employee to become a full-time employee. So hopefully we can truly fill that need in the very near future. So looking at the revenue for 22 and those for 23, only area that we see a decrease in would be the fire marshal permits. But the overall subtotal actually goes up to 424 versus the 374. We did apply for 2 federal grants back in February. We haven't heard nothing about yet. If those 2 grants were to come to fruition, that would be roughly about $4.2 million. That would help with the staffing and a lot of radio equipment that we're asking for. So looking at the expenditure lines, I pulled our 21, 22, and those 23. So you'll see that the salary line basically stayed the same for over 3 years. The proposed for FY23 shows the premium pay adjustment of $258,475. That's the biggest piece there. The rest of the line stayed pretty much level across this page. There is a big jump in overtime. We'll address that shortly. I'll run you through why we asked for the adjustment there. There's an adjustment. On page number 2, I highlighted the ones that were where we saw increases. The accreditation line is something we had back in 2018. We removed it. I've asked to put it back in 2023. I'll explain that shortly as well. Travel and education, there was an increase there. We'll talk that shortly. Fire supplies and uniforms. So, to discuss those areas where we saw the increase. So, the FY23 proposed budget shows an increase of 9%. 5% for it is all that salary and benefits. And then there's basically a 4% operational cost for the budget for our 23 request. So overtime is to cover the additional training requirements for personnel. We're really hitting it hard with this training for the ladder truck. It takes a lot of training to get these guys and women up to speed. So that's going to be a big overtime cost for us. Also, with being at minimal staffing every day, I get 1 sick leave. We're already into overtime, so. I've asked the city manager to reinstate my accreditation line that we removed in 2018. My goal is to try to work over the next 3 to 5 years to have the fire departments become an international accredited fire department. There's only 300 across international waters. And that's a big thing. If you can do that, you've done something big to achieve.
Is that affected by the lack of our ability to staff the ladder truck?
It'll show us the best practices of how to get there. It'll show us that you're falling short here and you need to do X, Y, and Z to get there. It runs through the whole staffing model of, are you doing this right? Are you doing this right? Are you doing this right? Are you putting your employees in the right place to succeed? Can you move the employees from X to Y to get them to deploy a better model? It really looks at the deployment model as a whole. And I think it's really going to help us truly with our strategic plan go, wow, we could actually do this, this, and this. And it'll give me the true data to bring to this group to say this is what I need.
Okay, thank you.
So, the maintenance and service contracts, we've seen a lot of inflation costs with that, so that's an increase there, which is about $8,000. Travel and education is to prepare all of our personnel for the career development policy we put out with succession planning, a ladder truck training. I truly embrace and want my staff to go do training. If you can figure out a way to get off work, if we can detail you off work, if you have to take annual leave, whatever it takes, I want you to go train. I have no problem in training. I'll even work for you if that's what it takes. Just go train. But there's a cost to get these people to train. As we know, when I detail somebody else, I got to put somebody back in overtime. Operations has to keep going. So that's the big jump there. And of course,
Chief.
Yes, sir.
Chief, yeah, just wanted to add for the governing body, you can see across our city budget, it's not just the fire department. You saw in the police, you saw in most of our departments have increase in travel and education in FY23. And this is something I talked a little bit more about with the governing body 4 years ago when we were looking at all of our issues. This was one of them. We were severely underfunding training for our employees since the Great Recession, and we weren't able to recover that as much as we wanted to 4 years ago. We decided that we just couldn't afford to do that because of the debt spike and everything else we were dealing with. So now we're in FY23, we're past survival mode, so we're trying to put more money into the training of our employees starting in FY23, and that's why you see kind of the increase for the travel and education line across all the departments. I just wanted to kind of add that caveat in there.
And then we see fire supplies and uniforms also see an increase simply based off the inflation cost that we're dealing with. You can call vendors' names and tell them, hey, this is what it's going to cost. And it's like, how much did it go up? And so that's a big eye-opener for us. The CIP overview is a snapshot for 5 years. I know we're going to talk about this in depth in the next few weeks coming up. I think, right, like the 19th or something. So I won't go too deep into it, but I know there's one item coming to you next week. That's in FY22 for some radio equipment. I see there's some radio equipment for FY23, and then there is a ARPA-funded initiative for some cash, which is there. Some future needs, additional staffing to meet the current city's growth and development plan. We haven't really added to the staff at the fire station since 2010. It's the last time we really added staff, and that's when we started EMS billing. We need to address some retention ideas to maintain our current employees. Our employees, like I said, they're tenured employees. They made a true investment to the city. To maintain a CIP up to date for our aging building and our emergency equipment. As I told you, the price tags are growing. And then we need to truly look at strategically placing fire stations, whether it's going to be where it's at now and grow it, or whether it's going to be strategically place them east and west for the better of the city. And that's something I've been talking to Mr. Palco about and trying to plan out what's going to be our best route of travel as we move forward, as the city grows and as we age. One thing I'll tell you about the increase on equipment and fire trucks and medic units. We bought a paramedic unit for an ambulance. I think it was back in, last was 2013, 14. We're right at $200,000. We just purchased one of the last springs. It was at $325,000. We're already being told you can look at 400 and some thousand for next year. The last fire truck we bought back in 2017 was $675, I believe it was. We're already been told if you look to buy it off the CIP, we have one for next year. That one's going to be at least $845,000. And the problem with these apparatus right now are the build time. They used to be 8 to 10 months. They're 2 years now. It's a 2-year build time. So that was something we just found out over the last couple of days. I'm like, wow. It was very shocking.
Wow. Okay. Comments or questions?
So, Chief, do you know what's driving the increase in calls?
Increase in calls?
Mm-hmm.
So we have done what's considered AVL, CAD-to-CAD dispatch with all northern Virginia. Not just Prince William County, but all northern Virginia. So the CAD-to-CADs are now talking to each other and they're watching each other's staffing. So the closest units go into wherever the 911 call is. So if we're just driving out down 28 in towards Yorkshire and all of a sudden there's a call at Centerville, that CAD system's gonna find that locator on top of that fire truck and go, okay, the engine from Manassas Park needs to go, they're the closest unit. Because the goal is to put what? Service on the scene as fast as you can. The seconds matter. That's what's driving up our call volume.
Okay.
The good thing is, should we leave Manassas Park, there's always someone that's gonna come back in here and help us out.
Hey, Chief, did you get your in your fire station the gates fixed? I remember you had a problem with I think it's the bearings or something falling out whenever your doors come down.
Oh, the bay doors?
Yeah, the bay doors.
So we fix them on a regular basis.
Oh no.
They're in the CIP to be replaced. I think it's FY24.
Okay.
We see them break pretty much. It seems like it breaks on the weekend.
Right.
We got to call Kenny and he goes,
I'm okay.
Seems like it happens on the weekends.
Okay.
It is in the CIP to be fixed.
Okay, that's I got that. And also the transfer station. And my concern is the risk of the fire at the transfer station because they're dealing with so many different wastes and it's maybe combustible. Do they give you an overview? Do they have spray systems in it or?
So I can tell you the fire marshals have been in there. I personally have been in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've been there as the ops chief, but I can tell you our crews have toured it.
Okay.
Our crews go into everything. I got telling Mr. Palka, they've been touring the new city hall right and left. They probably know that building better than anybody right now. So I'm sure they've been there. I don't know if there's a suppression system. I would imagine it would have to be the fire code, but I don't know truly. I can get you a true answer.
Oh no, that's fine. As long as you guys have toured it and you're familiar with the building, that's fine. Thank you.
Just want to follow up on the bay doors. We'll be funding that or proposing to fund that in FY23 using ARPA funding for the doors for the fire station so the ambulances can get out safely.
Okay, thank you.
That's good news. Any other questions? Yes.
So your overtime budget for next year is $239,000. How many people could you hire with that?
So we're looking at, we did our federal grant, we said it was roughly 80,000 per employee, so.
Almost there. So 2. So that wouldn't solve the problem.
You have a follow-up?
Nope.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Have any
I got
Yes,
one
go
quick one.
ahead.
So the ladder truck, I guess, is not dispatched out, but say you get a call from the apartments, can you dispatch that out then? If it's just an apartment, just because you don't know what level it'll be on?
The answer to that is no. Right now, because it's sitting in the CAD system, loaded in the CAD system in
Right.
Prince William County, is unstaffed. So the CAD doesn't even recognize it, they didn't know it exists.
So even if you take out, instead of taking out that 3 staff apparatus, you can't put that staff in this one and say, hey, we're going to take the ladder truck out instead of.
It would probably not be the best practice to take one crew off one truck and put them to another, because I think you're just asking for.
Well, I'm saying instead of taking that one truck out, leave that in the garage and then take the ladder truck.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
no, what we're asking now is we're asking a crew that's been on this one truck all day, that
So they
they
don't.
come in that morning at
I
7
see what you're
o'clock, they checked it out, and made sure that everything's working correctly.
I see
They
what
got
you're
all their
saying.
equipment there, and you're asking them to grab
And then,
their
then,
all their equipment and move from one truck to the next. And we've seen it happen before. We used to try that way back in the day.
yeah.
We've seen personnel leave important equipment behind,
Mm-hmm.
and then when
Yeah.
they get there, they're really not functional because,
Yeah, that
I
makes
can't
sense.
blame them, because like, you know, you're in a hurry, you're rushing, it's like, I got something.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to have it staffed, you know.
What year was that?
We'll get there.
20, I mean, it's not going to be in
Year 24. Was it 24?
FY24? Okay.
I think Mr. Pop had it for 25 through 31.
FY 2025
25.
with ARPA funds.
If we can we get the safer grant, we'll get there a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So, let's just hope that the federal government looks at Manassas Park and says,
They need help.
they told us no enough, they need to tell us yes, we want.
All right.
Yeah, our goal is to get grant funding to bring the personnel in sooner. The other goal is to have more robust downtown development business mixes that will bring in then additional revenues that we can reinvest into the fire department to properly staff. That's going to be one of the highest priorities we're going to put in once we figure out the final kind of business mixes in our downtown and what revenue that's going to bring back. That is something I'm going to come back to kind of speed up the timeline to get that ladder truck staffed.
Any other, yes?
Good question. Chief, I saw on Facebook that the fire department was having an academy for residents. If I remember correctly, it started this month.
Last night.
Okay, how well received is it?
So we had six residents show up.
That's pretty good.
All 6 were part of the 13.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was, last night, we just gave a overview of the department and some overview of how the finances run. And then every night it's going to be a different, like operations, EMS. One night they're going to do live fire stuff. So over the next 6 weeks, it's going to be really nice. If anybody wants to show up, they've changed the starting time. The group last night asked to start the starting time from 6 to 8 instead of 7 to 9. So it's the Residence Academy, so if they want to move to 6, we're okay with it. So if anybody who's listening and wants to go, it's still at 6 to 8.
And they just show up?
Just show up.
Okay. And you said one night's going to be like a live burn?
The very last night, I think, is planned for live burn.
Oh, that's one where people will come.
Yeah.
They was very inquisitive last night. They asked a lot of questions. Great.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Chief. If anyone has any comments or questions, please send them to Laszlo and copy the rest of us. And Laszlo, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, nothing tonight. Just a reminder for next week, we'll have the CIP presentation.
I'm sorry, could you please say that again?
I'm sorry, yeah, nothing further to add, just a reminder that next week we have the CIP presentation.
CIP, okay, thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the city? Okay. No closed session, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.